And could you tell us some more about, so what is the, what actually do we know that happens? And I know that, let's talk about MDMA initially.
Yeah.
And I know it's really important to say this is therapy with MDMA,
Yes.
not just giving somebody MDMA, they're going off and having a journey on their own. This is like 10 sessions, right, of therapy. More. So could you talk a little bit about what is it that opens the door? What does MDMA or other psychedelics do that kind of shifts a door that allows to be open? And what's the role of the therapist? Because I know there's usually two, to kind of guide healing in a really profound way.
Okay. Well, let me, I'll say that in just a second, but I'll start back to Brother David Steindl-Rast.
Yeah, he's been here before. He's lovely, yeah.
So I met him in 1982.
Oh, wow.
And this was at Esalen, and this was when MDMA was still legal. I learned about MDMA in 1982. And I went back there multiple times, and then I spent time with Brother David.
He's amazing.
And he was interested in doing MDMA to see about how it might help with meditation.
He's a Benedictine monk. Incredible. He wrote Gratefulness, the Heart of Joy, and he's just amazing.
Yeah, gratefulness, gratitude, the heart of prayer. And it's amazing he hasn't been excommunicated.
It is.
But what he said was he did half a dose in the monastery for meditation, and he felt that it quieted his mind, it quieted a lot of the chatter, it helped him have a deeper kind of emotional, spiritual experience. And then later, after the MDMA experience was over, he could use that as like a guidepost in a way to do it without the MDMA.
Got it.
So that it was a training tool to facilitate deeper meditation
what is possible
afterwards.
Yeah.
So it was, again, this quieting, this depth. So in therapy, we had to do a very strategic analysis. How do we bring back psychedelics into the culture, and which psychedelic and which patient population? And for a bunch of different reasons, MDMA being the most gentle, the most easiest to integrate. Also, we believe therapists who want to be trained to give MDMA or other psychedelics to patients would be better equipped if they've taken it themselves. And there's more resistance in psychiatrists and psychotherapists to doing psilocybin or LSD than MDMA. Yeah. Then we needed a patient population that was sympathetic to the Americans, the American population. We needed a disease that, if it wasn't well treated, could lead to suicide, that it had high costs for insurance companies, and all that led for us to PTSD.
Yeah.
All right, so MDMA for PTSD, and as it turned out, we're the only one through phase 2, 2 phase 3 studies. And so PTSD, to get now to your specific question, PTSD changes your brain. And if you have PTSD, your amygdala, your fear processing part of the brain, is hyperactive. Your prefrontal cortex, where you think logically, is diminished in its activity, so that all these things trigger you and make you think you're back in this traumatic situation. And then the hippocampus, where we put memories into long-term storage, there's diminished activity and connectivity with the amygdala, so that these memories don't ever really get put into long-term storage. They're always about happening. So MDMA itself, and this was now discovered much later after MDMA was used in therapy for PTSD, because it began before the brain scans, but people observed what was happening. But now that we have all these brain scans, what we know is that MDMA reduces activity in the amygdala, so that your normal fear signals from these memories or these things are reduced. It also increases activity in the prefrontal cortex, so we can think more logically, increases connectivity with the hippocampus, so that we can put memories into long-term storage, and it's not now, it's now in the past. And then it releases a lot of hormones. Most notable among them is oxytocin, which is the hormone of love and connection and nursing mothers. And there's a woman, Doblin, a neuroscientist at Hopkins, that has done some incredible studies. The first one was with octopuses. And if you've seen my octopus teacher, you know that octopuses are solitary creatures. And 600 million years ago or so, the evolutionary line diverged between humans and octopuses. For whatever reasons, they still process serotonin. And so Gould wanted to know what happens if you give MDMA to octopus.
Because it becomes very social and warm, and
and she was like, yes, we'd love to send you MDMA to give to octopuses. Well, it turns out It took a while to figure out the right dose. But once they figure that out, you give MDMA to an octopus, and it hangs out with other octopuses now. It's just pro-social. So it's evolutionary conserved and pre-verbal.
Okay.
All right, then she did a study with mice, and what she showed is, and this is sort of the final piece of this methodology talk, is that you give MDMA to mice, it releases oxytocin, and then the oxytocin is what contributes to neuroplasticity, to new neural connections that are set up in these pro-social areas of the brain.
Okay.
So it's, in a way, an ideal substance for PTSD, but it's ideal only when combined with psychotherapy. It's the psychotherapy that we really are delivering, and the MDMA makes the psychotherapy more effective. And there are numerous stories of people that have taken MDMA, again, because this effect on memory and on the fear reduction of the amygdala, they'll remember traumas, but they'll be in a situation where they don't feel comfortable talking about it, or that they're with friends who just want to party. And we've had situations where people have checked themselves into hospitals to not kill themselves because the MDMA brought these emotions to the surface, but they weren't in a way to process it. So that's why what we're saying is that it's really the therapy and that context, and in our therapeutic approach, it's actually 3 MDMA sessions, 1 month apart, each 8 hours long, and 12 90-minute non-drug psychotherapy sessions. 3 before the first one for preparation, building the therapeutic alliance, getting the therapists and patients to know each other, and then 3 90-minute sessions after each MDMA session for integration process. And then the most important thing is, so it's 42 hours of therapy with 2 therapists, and we often do male-female, not always, but people have, we call it the archaeology of trauma, and a lot of it goes back to childhood for people. And so to have a well-functioning male-female team, which often people didn't have when they were growing up, it can be very reinforcing. But it's 42 hours of therapy with 2 people, so it's very expensive and initially labor-intensive. So the only way that insurance companies will actually pay for it is if it's durable.
Right.
And so what we've been able to show is that after, in our phase 2 data, we do the 2-month follow-up. So it's 2 months after the last experimental session. And we purposely made it 2 months so that people couldn't say, oh, it's the psychedelic afterglow. So that's what the regulatory agencies are looking at, the comparison between therapy without MDMA versus therapy with MDMA at the 2 months. But at the 12-month follow-up, what we found in the phase 2 studies is people keep getting better on their own without the drug.
Wow.
And so it's not just that it's durable, but people have learned how to relate to these inner challenges, these inner fears and inner emotions, and they've learned that instead of suppressing it, there's a better way to deal with it, and that they can let it loose, they can experience it. They've learned how to experience trauma in their bodies and in their emotions and to release it, and they then employ these skills after the therapy is over, and they can continue to get better. So we've just put out a press release about the long-term follow-up from our first phase 3 study and showed that the effects were durable.
Wow.
And I'll just announce that there's about to be a press release coming out any day now. So I guess this is a little time of advance notice. But we have partnered with Compass Pathways, which is a psychedelic for-profit pharmaceutical company working with psilocybin for treatment-resistant depression. And we've negotiated with the American Medical Association on what are called CPT codes for insurance companies. And they have agreed, for a longer code. So you don't have to pretend like, oh, this is 8 one-hour sessions in a row or something, so that they're recognizing that that if we bring forth new approaches to healing and they really are effective, we don't need to squeeze them into the old framework. The old framework will enlarge. And so we see that now with this new insurance code. So that's giving us a lot of hope that once this becomes a treatment, it's something that people will have access to it and not just self-pay.
Insurance will cover and probably save money.
We can't say for sure, but it's looking really, really good. And over time, they will save money.
Yeah.
And so
you're also doing some studies where you're integrating self-compassion and mindfulness, right, as a part of it. You want to?
Yeah. So this is well, this is one of the most important unfunded studies
Okay.
so far. But this is at Harvard at MGH. So this is a true sign that the ghost of Timothy Leary has been buried at Harvard. They're like,
they just launched the Thich Nhat Hanh Center for Mindfulness today at Harvard. Yesterday, actually. So things are changing at Harvard.
Oh my God! I was at the Harvard Divinity School a couple weeks ago for an all-day conference on psychedelics.
Wow.
At Harvard Divinity School. There's just So
anyway,
okay. So well, that's where they're very interested in the Good Friday experiment, of course, which is the first study in 1962 that looked at whether psilocybin could produce spiritual experiences, and they concluded that they did. But MGH, Massachusetts General Hospital, now has the Center for the Neuroscience of Psychedelics, and one of the researchers, Franklin King, is working to do a study with mindfulness-based self-compassion mixed with MDMA in veterans with PTSD.
Wow.
And it's going to be tremendous. The Boston Red Sox have this program called Home Base, and they fund the treatment center for veterans with PTSD. And so this study would be taking place at Home Base.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to interest the Stephen and Alexandra Cohen Foundation, that are big funders of psychedelics, and Stephen owns the Mets. So I said, this could be the Red Sox
competing.
Yes, the Red Sox and the Mets could be a really good combination. So, but it has not yet been funded. They're considering it. So I think that this idea that I want to get across is that the psychedelics are tools, and they can be used in many, many different ways. And combining them with techniques that help people to integrate, that help people to prepare, is the way to get the best results. So I think when you combine psychedelics with mindfulness-based self-compassion or any other kind of integration process, but particularly that, I think the results will be outstanding.
I think so too.